This is That Guy Jig Sports Podcast. I am him, JIG. Subscribe, rate, or review, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Check us out. And don't forget about the Instagram at That Guy Jig. But we're almost there, folks. We can taste it. Today's episode is bittersweet because it's a signal of we are almost to the new season and we are coming to the end of the first season. It's been an amazing journey. It's been a great run. I appreciate everyone who has subscribed, everyone who has listened, everyone who has tuned in, everyone who has told a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, so that way we can all be friends. I appreciate it. But before we get to all the goodbyes, let's continue with this top 25 post-spring breakdown provided by Joel Klatts. Because like I said, we are 2 weeks away. We are 14 days away. You can smell the disappointment and you can taste the triumph. People are going to have to be served up some humble pie here soon. There's some fan bases that are not going to be so chirpy here soon. There are some fan bases that we haven't heard from, that we are looking for, that are probably going to be loud as hell soon. We are at that point. We are at the point where, like I said last week, it is time to start canceling Saturday's events because I'm tailgating. It's time to start canceling Sunday's events because I'm sweating over fantasy football. All this stuff is coming up, folks. And with all this coming up, of course, that is what we will be on the next season. We will be breaking down these things. And when it comes down to these things, we are great at them. Fantasy football is something we love. College football is something we adore. This is a wonderful time to be alive. A great time to be alive. A time for triumph. But here we go. Starting at number 4, the Oregon Ducks. If you've watched Lance Manning, shout out to Lance Manning. That's my high school football coach. Hell of a coach, riverboat gambler. But let's get back to script. If we're talking about Dan Lanning, the head coach of the Oregon Ducks, who was just at Georgia, a very young guy, exuberant head coach. He's building a dynasty in Oregon. He brings in Dillon Gabriel after having Bo Nix, so he doesn't have to have that lull. There's not going to be a dip-off of a learning curve of the quarterback. Dillon Gabriel has played a lot of football. Dillon Gabriel has played a lot of football. He's played in the Big 12. He's played at UCF. He's played big-time football. He's played a lot of football. He's been a starting quarterback for a long time. He's coming off of 36 and 30 touchdowns. 3,600 yards and 30 touchdowns. 6 picks and 12 rushing touchdowns. So total, we're looking at a guy who accounted for 42 touchdowns and 6 interceptions last year at the University of Oklahoma. Now he's going to Oregon. He's going to be accompanied by Evan Stewart from Texas A&M. That guy's a burner. That guy's a good receiver. They still got Tez Johnson. Listen, Oregon is going to be a very solid football team. They bring in the number 3 recruiting class on top of the number 2 transfer portal class. They also have an unlimited NIL. Oregon is a team that is here to stay. Oregon's one of those teams that when they move on to this new conference of the Big Ten, I don't see them struggling. I don't see them needing time to adjust. The Big Ten will have to adjust to Oregon more than Oregon will have to adjust to the Big Ten. Oregon's coming in with athletes. Oregon's coming in with unlimited resources. Oregon's coming in with a coach that's 22-5. A coach that is a couple of decisions, a couple of cocky decisions away from being not only a Pac-12 champion, but also in the college playoffs last year. Dan Lanning is taking steps that you love if you are an Oregon Duck fan. If you are in the Big Ten, watch the hell out. This Oregon team is coming. They start the season off with Idaho, Boise State, and then they go to Oregon State. They kept the Civil War alive. You got to like it. You got to love it. Then we go on bye week. We go UCLA, Michigan, Ohio State, Purdue, Illinois, at Michigan, Maryland, and at Wisconsin. Finishing up with Washington. Now, I don't know if you heard that schedule, but that schedule is not overly daunting, and it's not overly tough. Depending on what Michigan is going to do this year, that is what makes this schedule tough, because you have Ohio State and Michigan. You go to Michigan, you go to Wisconsin. I'm here to tell you I personally believe that the game at Wisconsin will be a tougher game than the game at Michigan. I know it's the big house. I know that Michigan is defending national champions. But Michigan is going through some shit right now. There is some shit going on in Michigan, and it stinks. Harbaugh is gone. JJ is gone. Blake Corum is gone. I know this defense is good, but this offense is unproven. This offense is going to be leaning on new players. Their best receivers is now at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this team is going to be very interesting at Michigan. So this Oregon schedule, I look at a one loss possibly to Ohio State. You play Ohio State. Very admirable. But other than that, this looks like a very cakewalk first year in the Big Ten. Let me get to the playoffs. And yes, Oregon is one of my teams that I will be announcing later on in this episode as a playoff team. Because when you look at the schedule, I'll say it again, Idaho, Boise State, at Oregon State. Then you have a bye week. You go at UCLA, you go Michigan, Ohio State at home. Then you go at Purdue. You got homecoming with Illinois. You go at Michigan. You got Maryland at home. And then you go at Wisconsin, another bye week. And then you finish the season with Washington at home. This is a team that's probably going to lose 1 game, 2 games max. Oregon will be in the Big Ten championship, and they probably will be in the playoffs. One thing for true, 2 things for certain. I do believe Oregon will be in the playoffs. I don't think that's possible for them to miss. It is inevitable. It is inevitable. So look for the Oregon Ducks to successfully move to the Big Ten and successfully go to the playoffs. Oregon has a chance this year to win a national championship. Oregon has a chance. And that's what you love to hear if you're a fan base. And I'm not just blowing smoke up the old rear. This is full smoke coming out the head, ears, and nose because it's full steam ahead. Roger the Rabbit, full steam ahead. Oregon's going to be all right. Oregon's going to be all right. Number 3, Texas. Don't mess with Texas. Now, this is a team that went to the playoffs. This is a team that lost to a team that would eventually go to the championship in Washington. This is a team that returns a starting quarterback. They lost some receivers. But I'm here to tell you, Texas reloaded. Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, and Silas Bolden. Bolden, Golden, and Bond. Those 3 guys right there were all starting receivers at Power 5 schools. Houston, Oregon State, and Bama. And now they're all at Texas. See, Texas is not like Oregon. They don't have somebody that says you have unlimited resources. But if you know something about football, college football especially, Texas has money. Texas controls things. Texas has advantages of things. Like, for example, they have probably the best overall high school football in their backyard. They don't have to go too far for recruits because you have so much to choose from. You got Texas and then you sprinkle in a few Florida guys. Holy hell. And we have the transfer portal. And we have boosters. And we have alumni. Now we go to the SEC. It's not going to be a cakewalk for Texas. It's not. It's not going to be a cakewalk. But when you reload at receiver like they did, when you have Quinn Ewers, when you have a very good offensive line, coming off a Big 12 championship with the 6th-ranked transfer portal and the 6th-ranked recruiting class, not to mention you have Steve Sarkisian, who is an offensive guru, on your sideline. You have a good chance. Texas has a good chance. I know there's so many people who don't want to see Texas succeed because honestly, Texas University, your fan base is very obnoxious. It's very, very obnoxious. There was probably 2 things worse in human history than when Texas won a national championship, and that's Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Other than that, I don't think anything was worse in world history. I think Texas winning a national championship and the world having to listen to hook 'em horns for a whole calendar year might have been up there. It might have been up there for a natural disaster, catastrophe, all the disasters. It was definitely up there. I'm not a Texas fan. I just don't like to hear them, But overall, this is a good season outlook for them. You look at Texas's schedule. We got CSU. We got Michigan. We got San Antonio. We got the University of Louisiana Monroe. So they should start off 4-0. I know they're going to Michigan, but I will reiterate this again. What is Michigan going to look like post-Harbaugh? What is this university going to look like? We must remember, before Harbaugh was there, this university was in the dumps. They were struggling. Lloyd Carr was gone. They were going through the shoelace area, Rich Rodriguez. They were going through the Brady Hoke era. They were going through these eras that were not panning out wins. They get their son back. The prodigal son returns. And then now he leaves, and now you're in turmoil. Then they go conference play. Mississippi State, OU, Georgia, Vanderbilt, Florida, Arkansas, UK, and Texas A&M. Once again, this schedule is not tough. For the talent that a school like Texas has, Michigan is going to be a tough game because it's early. That's why that game will be tough. But I would not be surprised if Texas ran away with this game. Michigan at home early. Michigan on the road early is going to be tough. You play OU, that's always going to be a tough series. That's always going to be a tough game. The Red River Shootout is always a tough game. Then you play Georgia, you play Florida, Arkansas, UK, and then at Texas A&M. You renew that old rivalry, so that's going to be a tough game. So you look at OU, Georgia, and at Texas A&M. I don't put Florida there because Florida's at home. Arkansas is not going to be no pushover, but, it's still Arkansas. So overall, 4 of their toughest games, 2 of them are at home. So they split it. They go on the road at Michigan and on the road at A&M. 2 tough games. But OU and Georgia, OU neutral site, and Georgia at home. So overall, tough, but is it? Tough, but is it? Because you look at this schedule. Yes, you have Mississippi State. Yes, you have Vanderbilt, Florida, Arkansas, and UK. Yes, you have those games, but those are not slouch opponents. Vanderbilt's probably the only slouch opponent in that group, respectfully. We are in the SEC now, folks. This is their first year in the new conference. They just won the Big 12. They just won the Big 12 last year. They're coming off of being conference champions, so it looks like they want to transcend and transition back to being such. The University of Texas is in for a good year. OU, that's going to be a tough game. That's a rivalry game. You can never tell how rivalry games are going to go. The stats are 0-0 and the records are 0-0 at that point. The University of Georgia is going to be a damn good game. But listen, remember, this Texas team went to Bama last year and won. This Texas team beat Alabama in the regular season on the road. So what I'm telling you is this. When you have a guy like Steve Sarkisian, who is battle tested, who is known, who is a guru, when you bring in the recruiting class and when you do what the University of Texas has done, this is looking like it's going to be an all right season. I have Texas losing 2 games at most. I think Georgia and OU are the 2 teams that are really going to give them the toughest of the tough. I don't think A&M's ready. New coach. A lot of people left. I think A&M's defense is going to be top tier. But what about that offense? That offense was supposed to be rejuvenated the day they brought in Jimbo Fisher, and it has not been over subpar. It hasn't. So here we are. I like Texas, 2-loss team. Texas is one of those teams that I have in the playoffs. Texas is another team I have in the playoffs. We're moving on. Georgia. Kirby is still on top. I know that Michigan won the national championship last year. I know that Georgia did not make the playoffs. I do not care. They are 46-2 in their last 48 games. I'm a gambling man. I'm a riverboat gambler. I believe in Georgia. When you go 46-2 in 48 games, I have no choice but to believe in you. You have earned my belief. And I cannot take any belief from you. I cannot sell any belief stock in Georgia until Georgia starts to tank. And unfortunately, there's no signs of that happening. They have the number 1 recruiting class. They have the 15th ranked transfer portal class. They have Trevor Etienne. He transfers from Florida. He's now behind the big offensive line of Georgia. He's behind that quality O-line. The only thing that is stopping Georgia is the state laws. That is the only thing that's stopping the Georgia football team. Is a charger and a bottle of Jack. That is the only thing that can stop a Georgia football team. And they have shown that time in and time out. I firmly believe in Kirby Smart. I think Carson Beck is going to take that next step. I think Carson Beck at the end of the season, you're going to look and say, hey, this guy might be a Heisman contender. He's for sure probably going to be playing on Sundays. Maybe not as a starter, maybe not as a franchise quarterback, but he's going to be on someone's roster. We look at Georgia's schedule. Clemson, neutral site. Then they play the School of the Blind. Then they play UK. They play at Alabama. They play Auburn, Mississippi. They play Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, Texas, Florida, neutral site. Ole Miss, Tennessee, UMass, and Georgia Tech. So when I look at this schedule, at Bama's tough, at Texas is tough, and at Ole Miss is very tough. Those are 3 tough road games. Very tough. If they can win 2 of those games, they'll be all right. At Bama, I think they should be all right, be okay to beat Bama. Bama's going to be under a new coach, new philosophy. This is the first time Nick Saban's not on the sideline. That changes things. At Texas could be a loss. Going to Austin could be a loss for Georgia. Going to Ole Miss could be a loss for Georgia. Because you look at what's in between. You have at Texas, you have Florida at a neutral site, at Ole Miss, and then you have Tennessee at home. That 4-game stretch is brutal, folks. It's absolutely brutal. And if you want me to be completely honest with you, their schedule from Alabama to Tennessee is brutal. At Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State at home. You go at Texas, you go neutral site with Florida, and once again at Ole Miss and home for Tennessee. That is a very brutal schedule. When you think about the contrast of plays, the styles of plays, where you're going, these are going to be tough games. Georgia's going to lose 2 games, but Georgia's another one of those teams that I think is going to be in the playoffs. Once again, I want people to understand there's going to be multiple losses. Teams are not, listen, I'll be very surprised if there's multiple undefeated teams in the playoffs. You have to understand, these schedules are no longer cupcake. These schedules are built for money. And fortunately for the fan, built for money means good matchups. Built for money means we're getting the best on the best. And when you have conferences like the SEC, you have conferences like the Big Ten who have the cream of the crop as far as teams. These teams have to play each other. The more these teams play, the more teams that they get in the playoffs, and that is their theory. Will this hypothesis come true? We don't know. But right now, we do believe that if we schedule all of our best teams play each other, and if they lose, that should be better than a team that has one loss from another conference that doesn't have as strongest competition. That's the model that you're looking at. And that's what the SEC is doing. That's why you're getting these good games. That's why you're getting a Georgia and Texas in the regular season. You're getting Georgia and Ole Miss in the regular season. You're getting Texas and you're getting Oklahoma and LSU in the regular season. You're getting these good matchups because they know this is going to hold weight. When it's all said and done, when we start pulling out dicks, when we start measuring who has had sex with the better people, these body counts matter, folks. The body count matters. No longer do you get to go undefeated and you get to play 3 schools of the blinds and maybe 2 ranked opponents and get to be a conference champion or a conference runner-up and say, you know what, we're in the SEC conference runner-up, that trumps. No longer. We're not putting up with that crap. I understand the SEC thinks their shit doesn't stink, but I'm here to tell you it does. I'm here to tell you it does. And the number 1 team, according to Joel Klatts, post-Spring 25, is Ohio State, and this is last chance for Ryan Day. You have to believe it. You have to believe it. I don't believe it. But you know what? For the conversation of the podcast, let's just say he's on the hot seat. Somehow a guy who's consistently in the Big Ten championship, consistently playoff talk, is on the hot seat. Well, he went out and did something. He brought in Chip Kelly as his offensive coordinator, and Jim Knowles, of course, is still the best defensive coordinator in all of college football. He's still there. He has the 9th-ranked transfer portal class and the 5th-ranked recruiting class. Will Howard is your quarterback if you're a Buckeye. Quinshaw Judkins and Travion Henderson will be a force to reckon with on the offensive side as a 1-2 combo running the ball. This receiving core is the same receiving core as it always been over the last 10 years. Very good. I know Marvin Harrison Jr. is in the NFL. I understand this, but trust me, Ohio State does still have athletes. I don't know if you guys know who Jeremiah Smith is, but he's probably the best freshman wide receiver in the country. And he is at Ohio State, and he is there to make plays. He's already been making plays all spring. So I don't expect these things to stop because the season starts, because the lights get turned on. I expect these numbers to climb. I expect Ohio State to do big things. They are definitely one of my teams to make it. 100%. You look at this schedule. Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall. That is the easiest first 3-game schedule I have heard this season, and Ohio State should be sued. Michigan State, you go at Michigan State. You got Iowa, at Oregon, Nebraska, at Penn State, Purdue, at Northwestern, Indiana, and home for Michigan. This schedule is the schedule for a team that should have 1 loss, maybe 2. 1 loss, maybe 2. The Oregon game at Penn State is always a tough game no matter who you are. No matter who you are at Penn State is going to be a tough game, but I have a game for you, ladies and gentlemen, that could be a very tough game for Ohio State. When Ohio State goes to Lincoln, Nebraska, and listen, Lincoln, Nebraska is buzzing right now. There is a feel of bowl game in Lincoln, and that's going to be a tough game. Ohio State has done some good things. They bring in Caleb Downs on defense. You know Jim Knowles is going to have this defense rocking. For me, the key for Ohio State is simple. Will Howard. Can Will Howard not cost them a game? You don't need Will Howard to win you any games. You need Will Howard not to cost you any games. And honestly, by any games, the one game I'm talking about is Michigan. We can't sit here and act like the only game Ohio State's been struggling with is not Michigan. Other than that, they've been running through the Big Ten. It hasn't been close. It all comes down to that Michigan game. But now when you add in Oregon, yes, Oregon does matter now. I do see Ohio State losing 1 game, maybe to Oregon. But other than that, this is a 1-loss team that will be in the playoffs. Overall, here are my 12 playoff teams. Oregon, Ohio State, Florida State, Miami, Bama, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma State, K-State, Notre Dame, and Liberty. I believe that those 12 teams will be in the playoffs. A mixture of those 12 teams will be in the playoffs. And with that being said, this is the season finale of Season 1. And I would like to thank everyone once again for listening. Seriously. I started this podcast a long, long time ago. Years ago in my head. In my head I started, I can talk sports. But I never thought anybody would listen. And I appreciate all that do listen. And I appreciate all of those that will listen in the future. Once again, this is the season finale of That Guy Jig Sports Podcast Season 1. We will be back for Season 2 when college football starts. And then we will begin our fantasy football kickoff. Our fantasy football take. Because fantasy football is key in life. Fantasy football is life. Ball is life. Sports is life, man. But once again, thank you. I appreciate everyone. I hope you're back for Season 2. College football around the corner. Fantasy football around the corner. I'm around the corner, and I'll be coming down the mountain. Once again, this is That Guy Jig Sports Podcast. I am him, JIG. Subscribe, rate, review, Amazon, Apple, Spotify. Don't forget about the Instagram. And once again, tell a friend to tell a friend, and we can all be friends. Peace.